I think we do have sound now, right?
Yes, have sound now.
Okay, you missed the really awesome song that we had.
Boomer coded.
Boomer coded. Should we replay the song?
Yeah, we should replay the song.
Wait,
All
okay.
right.
We just continue the song.
Yeah,
One
yeah.
second. This is just actually, this is just embarrassing at this
Pure
point.
boomer. Pure.
I mean,
You want to put this chair up so we're releasing the
wait. I don't know how to do this. خلاص. الصدق فجن جنون جمع من الطرح وجننني ماشي بسرعة مليار شولح. Emily, let us know if you can hear anything.
Okay, there we are.
Okay.
Gott sei Dank. Okay.
We're gonna. I don't know how to fade out.
Just turn the volume down.
Okay. Okay. And we are live. Welcome again, Habibis, Habibtis, and Habib NBs, to exchange from the
heart of Fascio land.
the heart of Fascio land, and the resistance that is so huge that everybody is resisting, apparently in Berlin, from the fascist anti-fascists to the Omas gegen rechts that are actually very rechts. Yes, we are in Berlin, and we have so much to talk about. Rachel,
So much to talk about.
take it away.
Okay, so we have two buckets that we want to cover today. One is are the insane developments with the ceasefire and the prisoner exchange yesterday that was not actually an exchange because of the egregious violation of the ceasefire by Netanyahu and the Zionists. We also want to talk about the kiss that was heard around the world. One of the hostages, I'm sure anyone who's watching this must have seen this, but one of the Israeli hostages, actually, he's a soldier, so one of the Israeli soldiers, kissing two of the fighters, the Qassam fighters, on their heads. Just a moment for that to sink in.
Just let that sink in.
And then the other bucket being German politics. I wanted to talk about a little bit of the experience of being at this so-called anti-racist, anti-German militarization and war politics demo yesterday, which was a pretty horrific experience if you were in solidarity with Palestine. And generally then a bit on the German election and the state of things in Germany. So which one do you want to start with?
I think we end with German politics, because German politics are probably going to be the end of me. It's so annoying. So I think we start with the ceasefire violations. The Netanyahu and his self-proclaimed, to an extent, fascist government has violated the ceasefire agreement so many times in what we don't even have. We have like 50 days, right?
Less.
50, less than 50 days. It's been violated.
There are over 110 ceasefire violations. Is that correct? Or rather, no. I don't know how many ceasefire. There are more than that because they've murdered over 110 Palestinians in Gaza since the ceasefire was announced. That was the number that I had in mind.
So what we see here, like for me, it makes it very clear that as long as you're on the side of U.S. empire, you can violate ceasefires as much as you want. And when I say on the side, Israel is not just on the side; it's literally an extension of U.S. imperial interest. So it doesn't really count because the people you murder are brown people, or Palestinians are already other dehumanized groups.
By the way, this is an important point, which I didn't have in mind, but is actually really important to mention, because I've seen a lot of people who started out saying, correctly, at least in my opinion, that Israel is an extension, is a colony of the U.S. empire, of U.S. imperialism, and a watchdog in the region. And that's shifted a little bit, where more and more I'm hearing Trump and the U.S. government and Washington are Netanyahu and the Zionist pets. that is just not true. And that's something I'm seeing more and more, because you saw them coming you saw them coming to Washington. You saw all of the Israeli shit sitting there. But especially Netanyahu in that meeting, where he was smirking as Trump announced his displacement plan, his mass ethnic cleansing plan. And a lot of the feedback after that and online, a lot of what people were saying was like, Netanyahu controls Trump and controls the U.S. government. I think we need to be really, really clear about the Reihenfolge, about the order,
dynamics.
about the dynamics there. The U.S. said, or Biden said, now 40 years ago, or more than 40 years ago, Israel was created to protect U.S. interests in the region, and if there wasn't an Israel, we'd have to create one. So I think that's really important to keep in mind, just as a kind of aside, because that's a dynamic we see unfolding now as Trump announces these mass plans. It's for the U.S., and you see Netanyahu sitting next to him like his pet.
Yeah. I mean, also, just to be clear, like on your point, Trump is an idiot that can be easily manipulated.
Absolutely.
And
in the interest of profit.
In the interest of profit, which since the creation of the State of Israel has been on the side of the State of Israel. So it makes sense that as long as it's not just a watchdog in the region, it's also a justification for continuous investment in weapon manufacturing, and not just a justification. It is also a center for new weapon development that gets tested on Palestinians and gets then exported to other oppressive regimes, also in the Middle East, or in the so-called Middle East, like Saudi Arabia and these kinds. And these weapons get exported as battle tested, which means Palestine is the laboratory. I think somebody also wrote this. This is not just me saying this.
This is very, very well documented. No one's smarter, but certainly lots of people have talked about this. Okay, that was the first thing.
The first step,
where did you come from? I was so taken with that point. Right, having broken the ceasefire, having violated the ceasefire so many times, and ultimately that being ignored and manipulated also in the media, because of course, as soon as Israel announces something, as soon as Netanyahu says Hamas has broken the agreement, that's what's publicized. But what I do want to highlight about this is that it's getting more and more outrageous, what he's saying and how he's saying it. And it's getting less and less believable. And this always brings me back to the Ulrike Meinhof quote. What is it in English? We can't force them to tell the truth, but we can force them to lie more and more shamelessly.
Yeah.
And that is literally what we see going on right now, which is very powerful. I saw today Netanyahu having said, we've destroyed most of Hamas, most of the brigades, like most of the soldiers in Gaza, but we still have a little bit of work to do. And that is such a joke, no matter where you stand. Like literally, even Zionists, even Israelis will look at that and say that's just unabashedly untrue. I mean, that's just ridiculous to say.
Yeah.
And the more that he says stuff like that, the more that it really does open that window where people are just recognizing you're just fucking lying.
Yeah.
And so we see that now, of course, and for those of us who are plugged in, of course it's different, but it's becoming more apparent in the mainstream, in my opinion, where this video of this IOF soldier being released on the platform and kissing the heads of two fighters, and it was so, you saw that, it was so sincere, like it was so organic. And of course they're going to talk about psychological warfare and this and that, and how can you believe this? It doesn't matter. Netanyahu and the Zionists threw a shit fit, and that's why they received their hostages back and then blatantly, brazenly violated the ceasefire and just refused to return all of the Palestinian hostages who were slated to be released yesterday.
Yeah, and 2 points there. the claim is like, yeah, we will start returning them when our hostages are not when there are no celebrations around the hostage release,
and when they're not used for propaganda
yeah,
purposes.
the use for propaganda purposes. I think the resistance is playing something very very well, which is they also had a video of two Israeli soldiers sitting in the car waiting for looking at an Israeli soldier who was being released and saying like, "Hey, please, Netanyahu and all the people in the government, please let that be us. Please let us go home," and stuff like that. And these kinds of videos are very detrimental to Netanyahu's rule in the Zionist entity, and to because it puts the families of these hostages at a breaking point where, hey, like, just get them released, and the more you delay and the more you say, oh no, no celebrations and no this and no that, you are not in a position of power. And this is the point that they wanted to get across, I think. And I think successfully, to be honest.
Absolutely. And I think we've seen that every time the resistance comes out with this kind of, I mean, just these videos and this footage, it drives the Israeli society into complete madness. And that is, of course, detrimental to Netanyahu, who knows the second that all of this is over, he's completely over. I mean, he's completely done. But I think the dichotomy and the tension now will be will kind of percolate around the fact that the majority of Israeli society actually is in favor of murdering Palestinians. So it's not like, okay, that's super far right and the far right Netanyahu government is like this. No, this is actually reflected in civil society, 100%.
Yeah.
At the same time, this is, all of this tension with the government is bringing out a lot of those conflicts and a lot of the hypocrisy and around this entity existing, and around this being an ethno-state, and all of the kind of contradictions and violence that comes with that.
Yeah, it is also like, it's very like self-interest oriented, kind of. It's not that they want the hostage deal to continue and the ceasefire to continue, so nobody dies, or like the hippie everybody should have peace. It's not this. It's literally because, hey, we value the lives of these individuals, which are inherently more, like, their lives are inherently more valued under an ethno state than the other group. So the more you delay their release, the more the ethno state's demographic majority is threatened, and this is where like all of it is under question. And I think,
and this is something that's really coming out. This brings me to another thing that I was thinking about that I really wanted to mention, and that is something that I wrote about this week, like just posted about on social media, and I got some really interesting responses, and that is around the term Jewish supremacy, which I use very, very often because it is a factual version of what, not a version, it's a factual concept. That is what is taking place in this ethno state. There is one group that has supremacy, that is the Jews within this society, and there is a group that has been made to be Untermenschen. Like that is literally what is happening. And when you say that, you get accused of all sorts of anti-Semitism, and people go absolutely berserk. But I think it's actually really important to say that, because there are, of course, dynamics of white supremacy everywhere and in this society, which includes the fact that the Ethiopian hostage or prisoner of war, or whatever you want to call him, from Israel, was basically abandoned by the Israeli state because he's black. Did I say he was? Ethiopian. And so you see these dynamics of white supremacy also within the ethno state, but what we see in relation to Palestinians is Jewish supremacy, and calling that what it is actually allows you to very clearly name what's going on, starting with apartheid and ending or moving through to the fact that Israelis really believe that this is their right, and anyone supporting Zionism in any form, in any kind of continued form, is necessarily supporting Jewish supremacy.
Yeah.
And that is why the two-state solution is completely non-viable. That is why no solution is viable except the eradication of the supremacy of one group, of the Jews within this society.
Yeah.
So I think that's important, and I got some interesting responses where people have said, from Palestinian and Arab just people on Instagram who have said, we've been very heavily called out by this, even from within the Palestine movement.
Yeah.
A lot by liberal Zionist Jews saying, well, no, this isn't what's happening because it feels uncomfortable or something. And no, we were a minority movement. No. Like, put all of that aside. Look at the reality in front of you. This is what it's called. Call it that.
Yeah. Okay. So this discomfort, that this feeling that these people, that liberal Zionists get, even though they're like, oh, yeah, they think themselves as on the side of Palestinians, they're still liberal Zionists in the end, is the feeling that white South Africans would get, even though they are they are building wells for Black South Africans. It does not change the power dynamics there. And also also this feeling of discomfort is it's kind of telling, because you are you are again generalizing the concept of Jewish supremacy from the boundaries of the ethno-state onto the global scale, where it does become anti-Semitic to say, the Jewish supremacy, where it does become anti-Semitic. But
wait, why does it?
Because of like the whole Jews run the world conspiracy.
Where you've
do you see?
But it's not inherently anti-Semitic. But I see what you're saying, where it can be transposed.
Yeah. But that's the point. If you take it out of these boundaries, or if you refuse to understand it in these boundaries,
right,
then you generalize it onto a scale where it can be interpreted as anti-Semitism. But it's on you.
It is intentionally misinterpreted.
Exactly,
though.
But it's on you. It's not. It's not on anybody else. If you think this. There is an easy solution, and the supremacy in the ethno-state.
Yeah.
Don't make it an ethno-state. Palestinians get to have their rights and get to return.
Yeah.
And then you do not have this problem. So it's again, it's on you. I refuse to capitulate or like to self-silence because of this. If you want to understand the concept, ask about it. I'm more than happy to explain it. If you don't want to understand, then you have accepted Zionist narratives and you're butthurt. You don't want to know.
But this is actually really funny because, and this is what I've enjoyed about talking about liberal Zionism and Jewish supremacy, because of course it comes down to the replication of Jewish supremacy even within these conversations. I mean, the fact, again, that the comfort or discomfort of liberal Zionists in pointing or being pointed out to that Jewish supremacy is what's taking place ends up taking precedence over the fact that Jewish supremacy is the cause of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians being murdered.
Yeah.
So it's actually a perfect encapsulation of why this concept is exactly true and why it's taking place.
Of the hierarchies of...
So it ends up being a satisfying kind of irony, because anyone who really tries to attack you for it falls victim to their own hypocrisy.
Yeah. So Lou, talking about two-state solution, Yara Hawari wrote in 2020 on Al-Shabaka, the Palestinian Policy Network. Do you have a link for that? Maybe we can read it, or we can open it. Would be awesome.
Okay, no, she hasn't written it yet. Okay, we'll come back to that when she sends.
Yeah. What else?
Yeah, so I think that's a really important part of all of this, is calling it out for exactly what it is. And again, I just want to kind of... okay, here's Lou. Indeed, the framing of Israel-Palestine as two warring national groups rather than a settler colonial project has helped privilege the idea of two states along the 1967 borders as the most appropriate.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this is something that I just did an interview with Spanish TV yesterday, which was really nice. They were really very solidarisch and wanted to show solidarity, and interviewed primarily Palestinians and including people who came to Germany and were in Gaza at the beginning of the genocide. I talked to them, and one of the questions was, and this was very well, I really don't mean anything badly by this, but it was interesting how it was framed. This must be triggering for you, being in Germany and them accusing you of, I don't know, something like around, it must be tough for you to be on the other side in Germany, where basically Judaism is Zionism. And I said, wait a second, what do you mean the other side? What other side is there? Yeah. And then we got to this point, which is what I always repeat, which is that there is no contradiction within Judaism. Actually, really on the contrary, it's the opposite of a contradiction. It's if you've truly understood Judaism and Jewish values and have actually sat with the gravity and grounded in the fact of our own persecution over centuries, thousands of years actually, you are very, very planted in the righteousness and also the responsibility of supporting the Palestinian liberation struggle.
Yeah.
As any liberation. I mean, that's not even going near the genocide. Everyone should be fighting against the genocide. It's
the same side, my guy.
Absolutely. Yeah. But like, to the real root of standing behind the Palestinian cause, full liberation from the, I'm not gonna put it on here, but like,
I heard something.
I know. Ultimately, that becomes a responsibility. So I think this is, two warring national groups is the ultimate manipulation of that entire rhetoric. Yeah,
and also the framing, the making it into a religious thing, which I think we can come back to. Making it as the most appropriate and feasible future for Israelis and Palestinians, hegemony of this two states idea was further cemented when the Palestinian leadership implicitly endorsed in the PLO 10 points plan of 1974, officially becoming its champion, and early 19 with Oslo, which laid out a supposed timetable for achieving Palestinian statehood. What are your thoughts on that? Sorry about many messages. No, you can always send more messages.
Love it. The more messages, the better.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is what we really talked through. I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think first of all, the PLO and the PLO, through accepting this, accepting the notion that a two-state, or a Palestinian state specifically, because we've already had the other state established. So the two-state solution is only a logical thing if there are no states right now. So you can make two states, but there is a state. The only by accepting that steps and negotiations first need to take place in order for Palestinian statehood to be accomplished, the PLO has literally sold out the Palestinian cause into and also compartmentalized the Palestinian cause into small steps that need to be taken in order to achieve statehood. The Palestinian people need to be pacified. Resistance need to be limited in order for us to receive not even freedom, just a fraction of what freedom means. And by accepting this, what the PLO basically accepted was a little bit of settler colonialism on Palestinian land, which, like when Abbas comes out and says, oh yeah, they took Safad, I come from Safad, they took Safad, they can have it. My guy, it's not yours to give. It is not yours to give. You have...
And also, by accepting a little bit of settler colonialism, what ended up happening? Full-blown settler colonialism. Yes. At the same time, I mean, this is a little bit devil's advocate, but it also, I think, is an important point. Without like boosting or like justifying the actions of the PLO and certainly that of Oslo, because I mean certainly we've seen the outcome. I think you tell me your opinion on this. There is a case to be made, of course, from the perspective of people who have been oppressed, ethnically cleansed, and genocided for decades, to just want to take something, to want to end this, and to want to push towards some kind of resolution. Like I don't accept people outside of Palestine, particularly non-Palestinians, obviously, pushing for a two-state solution, because fuck you, full liberation, one state, all of these things. But within historical Palestine, where they're being actively genocided, in that position, to say, just give us something, like give us two states, if that's what you need, that's a different story.
It is a different story,
right?
And like, listen, I've had this conversation yesterday with someone that I found really interesting about how lenient would you be with a Palestinian, because like I try to give Palestinians always the full benefit of the doubt, because
in Palestine,
in general, just Palestinians as a group who has been marginalized in their homes and in other places, I try to give them the full benefit of the doubt, and I try to have these conversations about the two-state solution, and like how some people think it's feasible, and some people think it can be a good thing, and it's a little bit of freedom, like a pinch of salt, a pinch of freedom. It's just I cannot accept it as a solution, and throughout historically we have seen what settler colonialism is, and we have seen what happens to natives or to indigenous people under settler colonialism. The pacifying part only leads to reservations, only leads to Bantustans.
Yeah, of course.
So there, and also through this pacifying process that Oslo was, it put also more structures for the occupation, and it also diverted a lot of the responsibility of oppressing Palestinians in Palestine, in the West Bank. It put it on the new government, because any form of resistance that comes out of these hotspots like Jenin, which is now also being raided and bombarded and genocided, ethnically cleansed now, any kind of resistance that comes out of this means to Oslo, to the agreement of the two-state solution, means a failure on the side of on the Palestinian side, which means this diverts the responsibility of oppressing these kinds of resistances onto Palestinians, which leads to basically black cops beating black people dead on the streets, which is a normal thing that happens in settler colonial states. And I do not see it as a solution. I do not see it. I accept the frustration. I accept the feeling of being tired of all of this. Just give me whatever peace, and I'll just khalas.
But I think so, and this is interesting that this even came up. I wasn't even planning to have this conversation. Of course, I completely agree with you. But I think this also, my first thought in even like ansprechen and even talking about this is just that it can be and is likely to be a different conversation with Palestinians living in Palestine than it is with anyone else. And of course, that it is because of everything you just mentioned, the responsibility of us outside of Palestine, and particularly non-Palestinian allies, in holding this line and insisting on it and organizing towards this, putting pressure on governments and whatever international organization, however we're organizing, to reach the actual solution being one state, full liberation, Palestine right of return. But I think this is also, it's something that I heard a lot towards the beginning of the genocide, when Palestinians outside of Palestine were saying, how could they leave their land? Like they allow themselves to be. You know, I heard this from some Palestinian comrades. I wouldn't have left. Maybe you wouldn't have, but it's also, it's not. It's a different conversation. Like, I don't want to say that's super inappropriate, but it is. I mean, it was super inappropriate.
No, it is super inappropriate. Yeah.
It's different. Yeah.
Ethnic cleansing is not something that you choose. It's like saying, why are black people poor in America? Like, what the fuck? First off, you do not choose to be poor, and you do not choose to leave if you're ethnically cleansed. You choose to die.
Yeah.
And if you think you would have taken death, maybe think again. Maybe you have not been in a position where one of the options was death. So,
and if you would have chosen that, then that is a deeply personal choice, and that's your business.
That is your business. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway,
you can choose, and you can. In many cases, you can make this choice for yourself. Would you also make it for your entire family? Right. What kind of, that would be an irresponsible choice. If you have children, you would choose for you, your wife, and your children to die because of whatever, because you would go against ethnic cleansing. I do. Like, to think of ethnic cleansing as something that you can like as
make
a
right
choice.
Decision
as a choice is so. It's like Kanye West saying, "Oh, yeah, slavery was a choice." No, it was not. Like, it was not a choice. Yeah, just no. I don't. This is inappropriate, and I would like to have a conversation with whoever said that. You know me, I do enjoy talking about things sometimes. No, but really, like, I would really like to have this conversation. It's really inappropriate with this person offline, of course. But yeah.
Yeah.
And I have had this conversation
I'm sure you
before.
have. Yeah.
What else?
Anyway,
what else?
interesting tangent.
Yeah.
Didn't expect to end up there. Okay, did we cover what we wanted to cover about the ceasefire, though?
Wait, I had something. I sent you something with what Mohammed
right.
Al-Kurd
This was
said.
the last thing this was one of the last things that we wanted to say. So there's been all of this. I mean, the thing is there's been all of this pushback and propaganda around Hamas having had propaganda ceremonies. So there's been this kind of Israeli and Zionist and Western media pushback around it being disrespectful. Oh, and like one of the UN chiefs said that it was deeply disrespectful how they were parading people around and such.
Yeah, in coffins.
God forbid, in coffins.
Yeah.
The first point there being, how would you have preferred to receive the bodies? In blue body bags dumped into a mass grave? Wouldn't you think that would be inappropriate? Oh wait, that's what you did to the Palestinians, who you returned. Yeah. The second part being what I think you wanted to read from Mohammed Al-Kurd.
So this, and I have another. Just remind me of a coffin. Yeah. So Mohammed Al-Kurd said, one of the problems with Western allies, and I say this in earnest, is their refusal to interrogate their ethno-racism. What happened in Gaza was a funeral procession, and it is how Arabs, not only Muslims, have handled the dead for years. I wish we had the luxury to give our 60,000 martyrs the funerals that these people received, holding their coffins on our shoulders instead of forced to wrap them in plastic body bags and dumping them in mass graves. A few months ago, the Israeli occupation forces loaded up a truck and filled it with 88 bodies of Palestinian dead people, murdered Palestinians. And they dropped them in a mass dump site, in a mass grave. And we've had these people did not have names. They did not have identification. They were numbered in numbered plastic blue bags. and we've had less of an outcry, even from the UN, about 80, more than 80 Palestinian dead, murdered people, nameless, in mass
Branded with
graves,
numbers.
branded with numbers, which a whole
Sound
other
familiar?
yeah. Then we've had with 4 Israeli hostages, potentially, very, very likely, murdered by Israel itself through one of the thousands of air bombings that they've conducted in Gaza during this genocide.
Of course, also with these specific hostages, the first part of this being that Sherry Bibas was an IOF soldier.
Yeah.
She was a soldier. So of course part of the propaganda was showing her as a loving mother with these 2 little babies. I'm not saying, like, I don't support the killing of any children, but that's the point. Like,
yeah,
that's the point. Like, don't bomb children.
Yeah.
Don't bomb your own people's children. Don't bomb Palestinian children.
Yeah.
Okay. But also the other point around that being that Hamas made it known that she and her 2 children were killed through Israeli bombings last November 2023, 2 Novembers ago, and offered to return the bodies of her 2 children, and her husband, who was alive, out of mercy, like just to return them, because out of just pure humanity. And Israel refused, because they said it was psychological torture. They actually refused to receive the bodies and a live hostage.
Yeah. And let's not even call it mercy. Maybe it was pure propaganda.
Whatever, it doesn't even matter.
If propaganda is gonna get you one hostage back, then one alive person back, then you should accept it. But that's also beside the point. I wanted to also mention something regarding coffins. In 2022, Israel murdered the Palestinian American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. You can watch the forensic architecture analysis on it. It was a premeditated, intentional murder of a journalist that was clearly visible as a journalist
by a sniper,
by an Israeli sniper. And since we're talking about funerals, I would like to remind everybody what the Israeli forces did during her funeral. They attacked the people who were carrying the coffin until the coffin nearly fell on the ground. That was not in any hostage exchange situation. It was a Palestinian American journalist that was shot by an Israeli sniper, and during her funeral procession, the Israeli forces attacked until the coffin nearly fell. Now, yesterday, or a few days ago, during this hostage exchange, and even the 4 bodies that were delivered, no coffin was made to drop on the ground.
They carried the coffin, they carried it respectfully, and they carried it as it should have been.
Yeah.
By the way, that video of Shireen Abu Akleh, when they attacked the funeral, that was one of my, I think you know this, her assassination in general was one of my most profound moments of radicalization. But I'm remembering now specifically watching that video of them attacking her funeral, attacking her coffin, and it was, up until that point, the absolute worst thing I'd ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And it was a window, it was a lens into how chillingly barbaric these people are. Not just what they're capable of, but what they stand behind and sign off on.
Yeah. Zionism is insanely racist and inherently very barbaric, to the point that the dehumanization of Palestinians leads to Palestinians not even getting rest after death. And this is also the same with the more than 80 bodies that were returned. They did not get a proper burial. They did not get rest. It's the same with the thousands of bodies stuck under the rubble. It's the same with the children, with the babies' bodies decomposing in the neonatal unit of the hospital. Palestinians do not get rest even after death because of the insane dehumanization of the through the Israeli propaganda machine that even leads to, like, it speaks to the white supremacy of the West that leads the West to see Palestinians as inherently less humans. And Lou's gonna post the report, I think, on Shireen Abu Akleh.
It's important. If anyone isn't familiar with the story, it's a really, really important story. It's also Mohammed Al-Kurd, actually, in his book, writes about, or wait, was that where I read it? I believe, well, first of all, regardless, everyone should get this book, Perfect Victims and the Politics of Appeal. The new book is just out. Mohammed Al-Kurd in Germany. You can order it from Thalia. Either he or someone else writes about the killing of Shireen, where he talks about this appeal to the fact that she was also American or had an American passport. Was she?
Yeah,
she had an American passport.
An American passport, yeah.
As was also the case with what was her name? Ayşenur, the
Ayşenur, yeah.
Yeah, the Turkish American activist who was murdered in the West Bank last year. There's this appeal to a broader to the international audiences to say she was also American and therefore she's worthy of mourning, and therefore look at how outrageously she was treated, and ultimately it's part of this attempt to create a victim that can be humanized, a perfect victim, but at the core of it, that is all part of the process of adhering to and submitting to this dehumanization of Palestinians and of brown and black bodies.
Yeah. Oh, well, fuck. Yeah, it's been more than 40 minutes.
Yeah.
We have to talk about Germany.
Let's talk about Germany.
Fascism is back, baby.
Fascism's back. It's back and raging.
Yeah.
Can I talk about the demo
Oh yeah,
yesterday?
yeah. Talk about the demo yesterday.
All right.
How anti-fascist.
Oh my god, it was just beyond belief. So, I just posted a video about this, but I really feel the need to get some of this energy out. So there's a demo yesterday, day before the German federal elections, and it was a demo against undemocratic oppression, police militarization, and German war politics, and racism. It was against racism. It was an anti-racist demo.
Mashallah.
So we were in Berlin. It was actually quite big because it wasn't just the Palestine movement, and it wasn't just the socialist or leftist groups. The trade unions were there. All of the various, so-called anti-racist groups were there who are super Zionist, which is also completely ridiculous. Let's just say it. Let's say it over and over again. Zionism is racism. Zionism is racism. Zionism is racism. If you haven't said it today, say it to yourself as you're falling asleep. So I was at this demo and I brought my sign that says Juden gegen die AfD, Zionismus für ein freies Palästina, which means Jew against the AfD, the far-right German party, against Zionism and for a free Palestine. And this was the sign that I made last year, exactly a year ago, when I went to the anti-AfD protests here, and was spat at multiple times by a German Zionist claiming to be an anti-fascist, for this sign, and then continued to harass me and spit at me as I was saying my grandmother was a Holocaust survivor. Anyway, they don't care. So I get to this demo after having done an interview with these nice folks on Spanish TV, and I brought my sign, and as I was walking there, I was really noticing that there was a different dynamic carrying the sign around, and it was actually in almost exactly the same place as the last demo last year. Yeah. So I literally took the same route there and the same route back, and it was really charged and it was really uncomfortable, and I had that feeling last year to some degree, but there was more of a curiosity and there was more of an adherence to the social contract of, kind of propriety and not looking for too long. Although Germans stare, they don't care.
You mean on the way,
On the
not
way,
there,
not
because,
even
yeah.
there.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I'm not even talking about being there. This year, people were pointing at me, laughing, repeating this to themselves, making faces, talking amongst themselves. It was, and at every point as I was walking, down the street, I really felt like at any point there was the potential for someone to start harassing me verbally or like physically attack me. It was, no one physically attacked me. But it was very, very uncomfortable, and there was a lot of activity and there was a lot of reaction, and people would literally just stop, and they would stop right in front of me, and there was a bit of a physicality to it as well. Anyway, so I get to the demo, and the fucking first thing that happens is I'm standing there with my dumbass sign, and this German comes up to me, and I have to say, I'm so triggered by Germans being fascist, racist, fucking Nazis at me in the German language. It really, really triggers me. He comes up to me and he says, "Are you a Jew?" I said, I'm a Jew. And he said, "Oh, I don't believe that." And he walks away. And I said this in my video. I broke my rule, because my rule is we don't talk to Zionists. We don't talk to Zionists. Like, I fall asleep telling myself that we don't talk to Zionists.
Yeah.
But there's something about these types of situations that makes me see red. So I ran after him, and I'm yelling at him, and I said, "How dare you?" And he was completely self-assured, and he said, "What are you gonna do? Like, unsign me? Like, you're gonna turn me into the cops?" And I didn't have the wherewithal to take my phone out and actually film it. Not that I would have pursued it anyway, because no one cares.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to see the total brazenness, like the absolute confidence he had that the state would protect him in harassing me, because of the utter dehumanization of anyone standing in solidarity with Palestine, let alone like Palestinians or Arabs.
I mean, it just to touch on something. He literally said, "Oh, you say you're a Jew? Listen, no, me, German, I get to decide. You
Yeah.
know Jew."
Yeah.
And like, crazy.
Also, like, if you want to, whatever, I don't need to extrapolate this much, but it is Holocaust denialism. Like, my family was literally slaughtered in Germany, and I have the spawn of Nazis whose fucking grandfather gassed my family, telling me, "You're not a Jew." Like, this is literally part of it. Like, and again, it's very important to me to center the Palestinian struggle, the fact that brown people, Arabs, and particularly Palestinians, are the main target of this racism and repression. Of course they are. And the way that it's applied to me is predominantly an extension of this anti-Palestinian racism.
Yeah.
Total clarity on that. I just want to make it clear, because people also like to jump to this labeling of, "Oh, that's anti-Semitism." That actually is anti-Semitism, I have to say. Like, if I was going to, in my opinion, if I was going to label anything as anti-Semitic from these types of people, that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was one thing. And so I stayed there for a while, and then as I'm walking back and I'm carrying the sign, and I'm getting all these reactions. So I go and sit in the park to make a stupid little Instagram video about this whole thing. And this guy comes up to me. I'm sitting in a pretty much empty park by myself. I have the sign kind of like turned to the side. He comes up to me and he says, "Can I take a picture of your sign?" I said, "Oh yeah, sure." And he said, "I want to be able to show what stupid people look like."
Does he not have a mirror?
Like, it's clearly. So just this like dumb asshole comes up to the park, and then it took me a minute, and I was like, "Wait a second, what did you just say to me?" And so I ran after him, and I'm yelling at him, and I'm filming him. And he says, "Oh, leave me alone." And he starts to kind of play the victim. And I was like, "You're going to be genocidal towards me, and then you're going to say what, that I'm harassing you?" So that I actually have on video. Not that it matters, but I have his face in case anyone's interested. I just want to bring this here because, first of all, I'm sorry for I'm like talking all this time.
Listen,
telling this
ramble.
I'm like, it was so infuriating. It was so upsetting. I mean, I have to be completely organic. I feel like this shouldn't touch me at this point, but it was really upsetting. I came home and I slept for 5 hours. I was so exhausted by this whole thing.
Yeah.
And the difference is also for me, I don't get triggered like this in the UK. I don't get triggered like this in the US. It's something about it specifically happening in Germany.
And in German.
I
mean,
so. And
generational trauma,
Yeah.
like literally generational
generational,
trauma, and maybe it. Of of course it's gonna have more weight in
Yeah.
fucking German. In Germany, a white German dude telling you that you are not a Jew, like what? Does it?
But you know, and this also, the way that it also hits me is, of course, not just my family died in a genocide here, but is, of course, this invocation of discrediting me completely and dehumanizing me completely by taking all of the racism that these people have towards Arabs and Muslims and Palestinians, and dumping it on me specifically, kind of on the basis of my Jewishness. And of my Jewish exactly of that's what I was going to say, of my Jewishness not fulfilling this definition that they as Germans have dictated.
Yeah.
And the reason also why I call this anti-Semitism, which is actually kind of interesting, actually it is interesting, is because when you look in these people's faces, they're so mad. And this is something that I wrote in one of the articles that I wrote. The Germans will never forgive the Jews for the Holocaust. And that is at the core of it. The Germans are furious that they've had to sit around and be responsible for this concept of German guilt, which again we know is just German racism, but that they've been humiliated on an international scale, and that their whole socialization has been defined by having to repent and all of this. They are furious at the Jews, but they can't come out and say that to Zionist Jews because Germany has prescribed for itself through its Staatsräson that they should unequivocally support Israel. So what's the magic solution? What's the final solution that they can come to is they can take an anti-Zionist Jew and just say, fuck you.
Yeah. Oh my God. I had this. Okay. So I had a thought, and I don't know if it's very relevant. And I hate that I remember this quote by this genocidal, fucking insane colonial piece of shit. But what was her name?
In Germany?
No, the Israeli prime minister that is loved, where Sem Özdemir quoted her shit. Wait, what was her name? She said like something around we will never forgive.
Golda
Meir.
Golda
Yeah.
Meir. Yeah.
She was like, oh yeah, we'll never forgive the Arabs,
right.
Palestinians
right.
here, for letting us kind of murder their children or stuff like that. Like some very insane, like switching of victim
Totally.
perpetrator roles, and it reminded me of this, which is very on point. It's kind of a proof that it is literally a genocide that is literally like in the ground, in the founding stones of the Israeli settler colony, as lies a genocidal intent that till now is like very clear for anybody who's looking, but it's also settler cannoli. Yeah. And but it's also like it tracks till now, and it's also it shows like these
like
parallels. Yeah, these parallels between both of them, and it's a proof that both have genocide.
That's such a parallel, though.
Yeah.
It's always the oppressor who is the victim of their own genociding.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is you see the Germans, all they want is to be the victims, which is why you see all of these Germans converting to Judaism, and then taking over Jewish spaces and dictating that anti-Zionist Jews or Jews who don't fit their vision are not allowed in. And this is the same thing that's happening. I saw this also today. Some genocidal settler was talking about how the Arabs are the greatest enemies the Jews have ever had. My Alta, my guy, what are you talking about? You're talking about the people who you're genociding are the biggest enemy you've ever had, and not the people who genocided you. Like,
no, there's like, it's like an anime thing. The arch nemesis of this is my arch nemesis. It's like Sherlock Holmes and Moriarty. Like it's so stupid. Please, oh my God. And
Anyway.
on this I don't know. We're almost
done.
we're almost
Maybe
done.
a few words on the election. I'm sorry, I took over that
No,
chunk
it's
of time.
okay. I
With,
just
like,
want to say settler cannoli. It's yeah. Oh, okay.
Rebecca jumping in for
Yeah.
valuable contribution.
The German election.
The German election.
So the prognosis till now is
What was
CDU.
expected? Like,
Yeah, it's like CDU, AfD,
SPD.
SPD, and then Grüne.
Die Linke came in with more, or at least when I last looked, I believe they came in above what they were expected
Yeah, I
to.
think
They were
7.
9%.
I think they're gonna be at 9 or 7%.
Yeah.
It's still not complete, like, but
No, but they made it in and they took votes. Took seats from the AfD, which was the idea around that some people had around voting strategically. Neither of us can vote, so.
So yeah, we made it maybe. No, but I mean, what possible coalitions are there? We have CDU, AfD, which would be like nightmare, blunt rotation, nightmare coalition. We have CDU, SPD, BSV probably.
No, they're at like 4%.
They're not making it.
That was what I saw last. Was BSV was at 4%. Was not at 5. They weren't at 5.
Okay. I mean, we still have to
like
check.
An hour ago or so.
Yeah, we have to check if anybody has credible information.
I just want to make like a more general note on the election, because in the last stream or the stream before last, we had a little rant about like, who gives a shit about parliamentary politics? They're all genocidal, and that's not actually my political one.
BSV made it.
BSV made it. Okay, all right. I think, and I wrote about this also today, there really was and is something to be said for using your vote strategically, and some people have argued that and understandably, and I would say rightfully so, that voting for Die Linke, although there are a lot of Zionists and genocide supporters within Die Linke, they still aren't fascists, and ultimately you would probably prefer to have someone from Die Linke versus the AfD in government
all day.
So using your vote strategically in that way makes sense. Something that kind of occurred to me today, that has bothered me, that I think is important to mention, is people who take this approach to voting as a strategic tactic, who also understand that real anti-fascist work is not voting once every however many years, but is doing other kinds of work. Those people, or anyone, shouldn't be taking the time to put pressure on people who choose not to vote under these circumstances, where, for instance, for Palestinians whose families are dying in Gaza or in the West Bank, who maybe have the choice or ability to vote here, but choose not to, because for them it's a choice of which genocidal party is going to slaughter their relatives next. I think you see that significantly amongst leftist groups, saying, well, okay, but we're worried about the rise of fascism. Well, look at the situation that people of color, and particularly Arabs, are in at the moment in Germany, where they're being snatched off the street and deported. For them, is it going to be worse? For us, maybe it'll be worse.
I just want to say, similar to the US elections, it's not on us to help you not become fascist. You maybe try to not become fascist on your own. Why do we have to always carry the responsibility of someone like Kamala winning or losing? Because we should, because it's gonna be Trump. It's gonna be worse under Trump, or it's gonna be worse under the AfD. Yes, it's gonna be worse under the AfD. It's just your lack of reflection in your voting choices throughout the past years have led us to having two choices that are both shit. And now I have to carry the responsibility of getting us both out of this boat.
But this is also this fundamental, in my opinion, this fundamental misunderstanding of where fascism starts. Fascism doesn't start with the left arm of one person from the AfD. Look at what's going on right now. This is the fundamental material conditions that lead to fascism. You want to call it fascism now or tomorrow, in 2 months or 2 years? It's already like the things that people who are voting against the AfD and demonstrating against the AfD are afraid of are already happening to people now. They just aren't used, so you don't give a shit about them.
Yeah. It's gonna be hard organizing under the AfD. Yeah, it's been fucking hard to organize under the not AfD, under the Grüne and the SPD. If you're organizing pro-Palestinian activism, it has been hard. There have been people who have been raided multiple times. The LKA is probably listening to this. Hi. Yeah, it has been hard. So.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I forgot this was actually the main point of what I wanted to bring up with the demo before I started ranting. Yesterday at the demo, BSV is at 4.9 though. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yesterday at the demo, I had left by that point because I was just like done with being harassed by Zionists. When they started walking, Verdi, the trade union, kettled the Palestine bloc themselves, the trade union people. And the videos are the most pathetic thing you will ever see. You have these self-assured, complicit, murderous, racist Germans standing with this look of smug, self-assured, I am the resistance look on their fucking pathetic little faces as they are protesting racism and surrounding brown people and then handing over this kettle to the cops so the cops can brutalize them and throw them out of the demo. And that is those are the conditions that we have to organize under right now. Yeah. And that will not change whether we have the CDU or SPD or AfD in power, because those are the people who are on the streets. Those are the demonstrators. And that is the character of this working class that we have to deal with. So I wrote about this today. I think this isn't an argument against organizing here, but this is really, really central to understand. And this will not change depending on who is in the government. That this is the character, this is the socialization and the values of the people who you're trying to mobilize, or not even mobilize, but organize alongside.
This is also something that we should talk about. Is like I'm willing to organize with you against fascism. It's just how long under fascism will it take you to hand me over to the fascists?
But this is the thing, and this is why, like, for me, this is not United Front. This is organizing alongside people who are a danger to me. They were a danger to people yesterday. They were supposed to be organizing against police militarization in Berlin, and they were turning people over to the police. Omas gegen Rechts are calling for more police brutality. Yeah. So for me, there is no justification, fitting this inside a United Front concept. In theory, great, yeah, United Front. But let's look at exactly who we're calling the United Front, because these people are not just like, okay, they're not going to be involved in the protests against genocide. They're only going to be involved against the AfD. No, they will turn us over, and we know that because they are handing us over.
Yeah, no, it's I think just like you said, theoretically, yes. It's not the breaking point. I do not choose this to be a breaking point. They are literally breaking with me on that point. Yeah. So, yeah.
But this is why
it's a law.
But this is why fundamentally, in my opinion, you cannot organize. You can't march alongside. You cannot organize with people who do not recognize Zionism as racism, with so-called anti-racists that don't recognize Zionism as racism. It is 110% contradiction. They are not people who you can work with.
Yeah, it is. I feel like I'm having deja vu. I've had this conversation before. We all agree Zionism is racism. How can I organize with someone that today is with me in the organization, in the demo against fascism, tomorrow stands against me on the other side when I'm doing my Palestine activism?
But how? I don't understand.
Sorry, it's not just like standing on the other side. It's standing on the other side of stopping a genocide against my people. It's not just like, oh, we have different opinions. No, the different opinion is I think I'm human, you're like, nah. So it's yeah. Yeah, sorry, continue.
No, I'm sorry. I keep interrupting you. I'm just like very, whatever. It's fluid.
Yeah.
But
Who cares,
but
man?
I'm completely infuriated, and this is just crashing around my head after that experience yesterday, because the cognitive dissonance is truly unfathomable. You have people literally, like literally, you have them saying, "We are protesting against police brutality and racism," and then they themselves kettle brown people and turn them over to the police. What do you think you're doing there?
Yeah. And like, who do they think have been the victim of police brutality and racism in the past 15 months, 16 months? Who? Like, who has been getting the brunt of the police brutality weapon? Who is like, I don't it's not just hypocritical, it is you think you are the resistance. The only thing you're resisting is progress. The only thing you are resisting is a literal, coherent, progressive analysis of what the world and what the dynamics of racism and police brutality mean for brown people who are being oppressed, who are being brutalized by these cops that you so really don't like, except when they take brown people. It's weird. You're ignoring this.
But this is ultimately, I think that's the bottom line. Like that is, and this goes back full circle to what we were saying earlier in the stream. These people are not doing this for anything except the optics.
Yeah.
They're not doing it for any reason other than to performatively play the resistance and to performatively put themselves in the position of victimhood.
Yeah.
And they are desperate to be the victim of police brutality and German war politics when really it has absolutely nothing the fuck to do with them. And the people who it does have the fuck to do with, they're going to throw under the bus and send to the gas chambers exactly like they would have done and did do in the 30s.
Yep. And on that note, we say
Stay anti-fascist.
Yeah, from like just my honest opinion, I truly don't like any of the parties running. They're basically all genocidal except for one, and this one is racist. So, I mean, they're all racist, but this one is like, so okay. Just a quick rapid fire round on the parties. CDU is very racist, not good. Like, what do we have? AfD is Nazis. SPD is literally literally part of the genocide. Grüne was literally part of the genocide. FDP is like also part of the genocide.
Oh, and calling for, I saw this sign today. What's his name? Christian Lindner?
Yeah.
A sign of him which says, Migration, auch guter Wille, muss Grenzen setzen. Have you seen this before?
No.
Migration, like you also have to set boundaries with goodwill.
Goodwill,
Is that?
yes.
Yeah. So different branding, same racism.
Yes. Yeah. So basically, all of them are racist. The Linke is, the Linke is left, but it's also racist because it accepts Zionism, which is a form of racism. So we're back to all of them being racist. And have a good night. Welcome to fascism 2.0. Yeah, should have ended like maybe, I don't know, 5 minutes ago when I still had some brain cells. I told you we should end with German elections because they will be the end of me.
Because they will be the end of you.
Yeah, we're here.
Anyway, stay strong, stay positive. Seriously, it's okay to be demoralized, but it's not okay to despair. As much as we're exhausted, we are not despairing.
Tomorrow is it another day.
Tomorrow's another day. The fight continues, and focus on building community and sticking with your comrades.
And as always, Free Palestine.